Today we will have the launch of the anticipated banking inquiry report, and just if I could be afforded a brief moment to say a few words about it. I know we'll have the opportunity tomorrow evening to debate the outcome of that report in the House, but just to say at the outset, I was glad to have the opportunity to be involved in it and work with Senators O'Keefe, Darcy and Barrett, and I'd specifically like to thank my own colleagues, Senator Bradford and Senator Norris, for their support of my nomination to participate in the inquiry. I think at the time, and not opening old wounds, we did have an unseemly issue here in the House where there was an attempt to have the membership other than was determined by the Committee of Selection. Over the last 2 years or so, the people who have been on the inquiry have worked very, very hard in trying to produce today's report, which it has to be said was against a backdrop of an Act that was totally inadequate. And I hope that the Houses and the next administration in particular will take on board many recommendations in the context of what is needed to be done to ensure that an inquiry like this is not hampered in the way that this one has been over the course of the last number of years in terms of ability to make findings, in terms of the investigative abilities of it, and so on. From a Fianna Fáil perspective, and it's worth noting that no member of the House, either House, wore their political jersey inside the inquiry. But from a Fianna Fáil perspective, in advance of this, we did call it for it to be established with a Leveson-style inquiry, free from the electoral cycle, which, as we all know, ultimately played a part in the somewhat rushed finish to the banking inquiry's work. Notwithstanding all of the difficulties in terms of the process, in terms of the trials that were going on elsewhere, limiting the capacity of the inquiry to investigate its work, and indeed the restrictions of the Act itself, which established...
to have a debate on this.
Yes, I know we are, but nevertheless, it is a point. It is a point that I'd like to make. I think it's worthy of doing so on this particular day. 6 million of the people's money has been spent on this, and I just would like to put on record of the House that whether the Senate continues until the next Senate election, and if it could debate the issue of the inadequacies of the Act, and in particular the process which it followed during the earlier stages, I have had concerns, and it's important that they're put on the record of this House, as to the influence of external bodies on the inquiry process, and also the way in which a whistleblower's protected disclosure was dealt with, and how, quite frankly, the Houses of the Oireachtas Service then sought to throw that whistleblower under the bus. And I think that that in itself requires an inquiry and an investigation. Notwithstanding all of that, I do welcome today's publication this afternoon of the report. I think it forms a reasonable body of work which reflects the public hearings, notwithstanding the imperfections I have outlined. And I hope that in the debate tomorrow evening, people will have their opportunity to outline their views. But secondly, the very important issue, Leader, that I mentioned in connection to the process, the whistleblower, the protected disclosure, and the influence of external bodies in the earlier stages is something that I believe the House could usefully look into between now and the Shannon election.